Hi again, we're back to these now dried backgrounds with the drywall mud. I can't talk this morning. We've got a lot of different ways we can do this, and I'll have to tell you, some of these things that I'm going to do this morning too are things I haven't done either. So we're going to try them out together and hopefully find some things we like. So first off, this is the one that we did over top of the inked page, and there's different colors through on this now. That is just because it's ink and it bleeds through anything else that's wet. So it actually picked up the color on the background of that page, and I really like the way this one turned out. I'm not going to do anything to it. I'm not going to add anything to it. You could, if you wanted to, you could paint over top of these. You could do whatever you want, but something like this, I think it's very interesting, and I would leave it as is. So let's do some other ones and see what we come up with. Okay, some of these, they're going to be plainer than others, and you know you're not going to want all your backgrounds the same. This one we did, if you can see anything through there, it's the lines. And this is where we just combed through the drywall mud. So we're going to start with this one, and for it, sorry for the noise in the background as I clean out my paintbrush, we're just going to do a wash of color over it. I haven't done it this way before, but we'll give this a try. We have the inks that we used for another project here, and all it is it's water and ink from our re-inkers. I don't remember what color this is. I'm going to guess it's bottle. But when you do these, just mix it up with some water, make a watercolor out of it. You can use this for watercolor or anything you want. And then it's pretty wet. I'm just going to paint it over. And when you do this, when you go over these with any kind of color, pretty much your designs are going to start to pop a bit here. And the more you do it, of course, the darker it's going to get. There's lots of options there. And what you can also do is dry off the top. It's going to dry off the top of the drywall mud, and the undersides are going to show. So, I mean, it's a very subtle look. You can pretty much do that with anything. So that's one option that you have. I'll let that dry. Another possibility that you can do with these is just inking over the top. This is another one of those that we had the stamped lettering in it that we use the stencil on. So you can use any kind of re-inker that you have. I'll use this one in Raisin. And you can go directly over the top of that and with your ink pad, or I just use these cosmetic sponges. I use these for everything. Go down to the dollar store and pick up a package. They're great. Anyway, if you crunch these up into a ball, it won't leave any sharp edges on whatever you're working on. And just, this is a good way to do anything with your stamp pads. Just dab it into the stamp pad. You'll get the ink on the sponge itself, and you can lightly go over whatever your design is. And you can see it's gonna pop that right out, and it's gonna be different on different surfaces because, you know, the watercolor paper is going to react differently. You could do it all in one color. If you just flip your sponge over, use a different one, whatever. You can use different colors. Again, just pat it in and lightly rub it across the top or dab it, whatever, you know, that you're doing. Some might fall off. You know, some of the drywall mud might come off there. That's not going to hurt anything. So you can have fun with this and do whatever you end up liking that you say that's eye-catching to me. So that's one. And also, I'm going to grab another sponge so you can see the areas that you don't have any drywall mud on, which is over here. You can sponge those too. Just use one of your sponges. It's going to go a little differently. And just kind of rub it into the watercolor paper or whatever your background is, your page. I love my inks, my stamp pad inks. They're so much better more than just stamp pads. So you can add it in. You know, that's a pretty cool background, I think. And they're fun. Just let them dry. If you're going to use anything wet on these, again, anything with using stamp pad inks or re-inkers, spray it when you're finished with a matte finish, or, you know, whatever finish you want to use, a workable fixative, so that it doesn't bleed onto your next piece that you add to it. So that's the second one. Okay, for another, we had where we used the sequin waste and we pressed through the sequin waste there. And just for another something to do, let's try some acrylic paint on those. And the same idea, it's gonna react differently with different pieces of your paper. My brush cleaned out again here. And I loved using just junk paper in the background because I use it as my palette. I use it as anything. So just add some paint to whatever. You can thin it if you want. You don't have to. And you know, you can just go lightly over it so it's only picking up just the parts that have the drywall mud on it. Or you can make it go through the paper, you know, to the other areas. Whatever you decide on. And then pretty much when you're done, actually adding a little water there, you can leave it as is, or again you can wipe it off those areas. And this isn't dry yet, but drywall mud is meant to be sanded. So if you want, when you're finished and it has dried, I'm not sure what this is going to do because it's not dry, but when it's finished and it has dried, you can even sand the top of that drywall off where you've added the drywall mud, and you've already put color on it. Once you start sanding, it's really going to take the drywall off, the color off. It's going to leave your design still in there, and it makes it really interesting. You can leave it like that. You could take it at that point and just go over the top of the design with a color. I'm trying to get some that's still on my sponge here. So it's not going through anymore. Now you have like the designs underneath and then the ones over the top. So I mean, there's just lots of options you can do with that. So it's fun to play with it. Don't let anything stop you with that. I did try. Here were our flowers. Another one that I was saying where you can just go over them. These Adirondack ink pads, the tops come off. So those are fun. If you just go over the top of something that you've done, that's exactly what it's going to do. It's only going to pick up the top of that design. Of course, the edges here where there was no drywall, it's going to soak right into the paper. This was a stencil. This had a flower stencil in it, and this is where we put the drywall mud onto the paper and then push the stencil into it. So some of it you can see, some not so good. But you can see where the difference is. This is where there was no drywall mud, so it just soaks into the paper. And this, it's only catching up the tops of the designs. So you can see where the flower is right here, or right up here where there's a flower. And then these were, some was leaves, but then otherwise this was just where we just pulled the stencil out of the drywall mud, so it made that design there. So it's also another interesting one, I think. So these are all, they're all different things you can do with that. I'm sure there's a lot more. And considering how inexpensive the drywall mud is, I'm hoping that you will, you know, find lots of uses for it. Use it on your book covers. Use it inside there. There's a lot of different things. But this is what we came up with so far. Not sure if you have favorites. I'd say this one here is probably my favorite. I really like that. But go out and play and have some fun. And I'll see you with the next technique.